Okay, let's talk about X Factor, Devan. And we've heard a lot about that in the backswing for a long time, with people trying to resist the lower body and the upper body. But as time has gone on, we know that there's not necessarily something that we want to do, but there is the X Factor concept in the downswing, isn't there? And that is a great way to generate more power.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even on the backswing, right, like the more hip turn you get, theoretically, you're going to get more shoulder turns. So the X factor is still going to be greater. That's one thing, you know, I worked for McLean for a long time, so he kind of felt like people misunderstood what he was trying to say. And so say you restrict your hip turn to 30 degrees and then you turn your shoulder 60, which is like a double, you still only have a 30-degree X factor. Whereas you turn your hips, let's say 50 degrees, and you turn your shoulders 100, then you got a 50-degree X factor. So in a lot of ways, I think, you know, it was kind of taken out of context and people are trying to, I agree with you, kind of almost over-restricting. We saw, you know, Michelle Wee for a period of time that almost looked like she didn't turn her lower body at all, which is pretty impressive how mobile she was. I definitely would not be able to do that. But yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, it's a lot of it's more the X factor stretch, which is that increase. So if you're at, let's say 50 and 100, as you transition, that might even be greater. The hips are going one way, the shoulders are kind of staying back or almost going the other way. And that kind of helps slingshot everything through a little bit better, creating that kind of peak speed at the right time. So at impact, we want to make sure that the hips are open to the shoulders, but the shoulders are catching up. Like they're definitely catching up. The hips have kind of started to slow down a little bit. The shoulders are catching up. And so it's all happening kind of in that transition period. So what do you like to feel for that, or what do you like to teach for that to players like that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was going through your Instagram and there was a really good drill using these alignment sticks. And I think this is an amazing visual. And I'll actually get you to come in and kind of demonstrate exactly how you would work with your students in doing this. And you're going to put one through your belt loops there. And then the other one, Devan, that's going to go across your shoulder line, isn't it?
Yeah. And so really you can kind of see here now the differential between the upper and the lower. And so let's say you go up to the top of your swing and you can kind of see that my shoulders have outturned my hips for sure.
Yeah.
But as I transition, I'm going to kind of feel as much as I can like this upper stick is going to stay behind and this lower stick is going to increase as I start down. Now I kind of reach a sticking point here, which is where those shoulders are then going to kind of start catching up. But, you know, the downswings, depending on the player, you know, Kyle Berkshire versus, you know, the average amateur, but about like 0.3 seconds. It's not very long. So you don't have a ton of time. And if you have a great transition, that's going to make everything at impact almost automatically happen. It's very hard to have a great shift, transition, X factor stretch, and then suddenly be out of position at impact. It's very unusual.
Yeah. And I think not only the feel, the visual, and the feedback of seeing those two alignment sticks, if you set up again for me. And then as Devan makes his way to the top of the swing, notice that as he just makes what would feel like a normal motion for you, Devan, you're going to feel like this lower body is going to start to push forward and begin to rotate as you move into transition. The upper body stays slightly further back. And as you do that, it's kind of winding you up as such. And do you feel like a bit of torque and a bit of tension through that body that's going to...
ton of coil, which then will in a recoil.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So using the body as the engine, which then that X factor almost translates that energy directly back into the club head at the moment of impact. So let's say the players at home, Devan, they want to work on this. They might also see that their swing comes over the top, which is very common when we see that players don't have this X factor stretch in the transition. How would you recommend that they work on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
The drills and then translating into the shots.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it two ways. One is like if they're on their own, they can kind of use the same setup, put this on your shoulders. The shorter it is, the harder it is, but meaning like if it's, you know, shorter versus longer. But essentially what you're going to try to do is you're going to feel like the upper stick is never really going to catch up to the bottom stick, and when it does, it's going to actually touch it. So if, you know, you're coming over the top like you're mentioning, this upper stick is going to outrace the lower stick, and it's never really going to get low enough to hit it.
For sure.
We want to feel like we have, like you said, that separation, that opening, and then when you come through, you want to feel like this is, you need to have enough right side bend, obviously, to make sure that you're not over the top as well. So that's a big one. Jump on in here. This is one other thing I like to do as a coach too that I think is really good. So just for people that kind of don't have that feeling of, you know, how to transition and how to move, go ahead and go to the top of your swing. Great. I'm going to try to turn you towards me, and I want you to resist me. So I'm going to try to turn you towards me, and you're resisting.
Yeah.
All right.
As I do that, I actually feel that my pressure is now shifting more down into my front foot and more down towards my heel naturally, as I feel like my
100%. If you can do one thing and it fixes 3 or 4 things, that's great. And you got to think something's going to move that club down. So if you're restricting one thing, you're going to mobilize something else. You're not just going to stop the swing. So I think getting the feeling of, okay, how do I stabilize my upper while mobilizing my lower is a huge deal. Obviously, a lot of fitness exercises you can do too. That I think you do enough in the gym, it kind of will just come back naturally into your swing.
Yeah. So definitely for players at home, I think if they go ahead and they get these alignment sticks, one through the belt buckle, one through the upper body, and they just first of all work on a feel of creating what would be a bit of a difference between what the lower body is doing and that upper body, and just get a sensation of, is that different from what their normal golf swing would be like? And there's a good chance that for most players who are attempting this, it would be that.
For sure. They're like, wow, this feels different. I've never felt that before. You hear that all the time. So I think the more that you can gain that feel and slowly progress in your swing, the better. And one other thing, go and take your setup one more time. You can do too at home. You can either put your arms on your shoulders or you can just swing back. Is, set up, and let's say that there's like a wall here. You can kind of put your left shoulder, lead shoulder on the wall, then try to push forward with your legs and open your legs. So this would kind of be like the corner of a wall. That's going to help give you that feel of someone almost putting pressure on that shoulder, keeping you back.
Yeah, perfect. So just as I do that once more, I want you to jump behind and just talk about the effect on the shaft.
Yeah.
What happens with that club shaft as I do so. So as I swing to the top here, mate, and I'm up in this position, let's say I'm getting that sensation that the upper body is staying back relative to that hip line. What do we see that shaft wants to do?
Shaft falls a little, arms obviously move out in front of you pretty well. And then, the opposite would be true. Go back to the top. Now mobilize the upper. Then you're there.
Yeah.
And kind of as we mentioned, there's not a lot of time to recover. That's where we see a ton of early extension, a lot of shaft rising, things that, most people say, oh, I'm not consistent enough. Well, that's because a lot of things are happening at the last part of the swing. We want to feel like you're kind of in cruise control the last part of the swing. And if you transition well, like you just did there, everything's going to kind of fall together.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to work on this, map out a dry drill feeling. So club across the shoulders, imagining that I've got that stick through my lower body, feeling a bit of that dynamic stretch, that X factor through the ball. And just feels like I'm able to then translate that nicely into the shot.
100%.
Mate, let's put this all together. I'm going to hit one down there.
Thanks for watching this video. YouTube thinks that you would benefit from watching this one next. So click that card and it could be the tip that you need to take your game to the next level. I'll see you next time.